Hi everyone, welcome back. I'm Di, and today I'm sharing with you my first impressions on the Monochrome Manga Club series selections for the month of March. So the Monochrome Manga Club is an in real life manga club that I host at a local Barnes & Noble, where we read 2 first in a series selections, and then we're currently doing 2 full series reads. So our selections for the month of March were Volume 1 of ID Invaded Break Broken. This has art by Yuki Kodama and original story by Otaru Maijo, The Detectives United. This one's published by Yen Press and rated older teen. And then we also read Volume 1 of Island in a Puddle by Kei Sanbei. This one is published by Kodansha, rated older teen. In addition to those selections, we are currently reading Assassination Classroom, and we read Volumes 5 and 6. And we started a new series read for the month since we completed Full Metal Alchemist last month. And so we started Delicious in Dungeon by reading Volumes 1 and 2. So since this is a first impressions video, I will not be letting you know my thoughts on Assassination Classroom, but I will be telling you my thoughts on ID Invaded and Island in a Puddle, and I will touch on my thoughts for Volume 1 of Delicious in Dungeon as well. So let's get into it. So let's start with ID Invaded. So this is a story about a guy who at the beginning of this volume kind of wakes up in a car and doesn't really know anything. But as he's sitting there trying to gain his bearings, he realizes that there are car crashes happening in the far distance. But he doesn't know anything else. And his muscle memory kind of kicks in. He's driving. He doesn't know who he is, but he knows that he needs to help out. And so he gets to the scene and there's just utter chaos. And then in the midst of everything, they discover a dead body in the back of the car that he has been driving. And something clicks in his head where he realizes that he needs to find out who killed this woman that was in the back trunk of his car. And I think that's all I'm going to say about this right now, because that's kind of all that the summary of this volume gives you. And I don't want to give any potential spoilers. But I will say that about a week before I started reading this for our meeting, which happened last Thursday, I heard from my friend Bizarre Individual and also my friend Jem from, I think her channel is called The Creepy Geek now. She just changed it. But both of them had mentioned that there is an anime of this series and that this manga starts at the end of what happens in the anime, or happens after what happens in the anime. And so I had already chosen this as one of the selections. I didn't have time to contact my members and be all look, I just found this out, let's switch out. No, there was none of that. That was going to happen. So I just decided to go ahead and go into it like someone who would go to a store, take this off of the shelf, kind of skim the back summary, and take it home with them to read. Because nowhere that I can see on the cover or the back cover or even the first and last page says anything about the fact that this follows the events of the anime. So in that instance, after finding that out, I was very concerned about how I was going to be able to enjoy this, with the fact that so much other stuff had happened, at least that I'm presuming, happened before this story even starts. But I still wanted to give it the benefit of the doubt, because why would a publisher put something out without, making those statements if they didn't think that the story could stand on its own? So I ended up reading this one, and yeah, the beginning of the volume can be very confusing because you really don't know what's happening. But at the same time, the character that you're following also doesn't really know what's happening. So it makes sense, or at least to me, it made sense the way that it was laid out. And as you go through the volume, you find out more and more things. And I actually really enjoyed this one. I wasn't confused. I could pretty much figure out what was going on. Now, I do get the general feeling that some of the stuff that might have happened in the anime could, like, give a better view on, say, what our character here, this guy on the cover, is going through, and maybe some back info onto some of the other things that had happened in this volume. But I enjoyed this one. I enjoyed it without knowing anything else about this series. I was able to follow without being confused. And while I do think that watching the anime would help probably the experience of reading this, if you find that you've picked this up and are confused or generally didn't like how things were going because it felt strange, you're not alone. Many of my Monochrome Manga Club members, when we were talking about it, was actually very animated about talking about the fact that they did not enjoy that at all. They also did not know that, you know, the anime existed. And there was general anger about why wasn't anything notated on the cover advising you to, like, watch the anime first. Now, I don't know anything about the anime. I'm definitely going to look into it after I record this video, but I didn't want to do it before I gave my thoughts. So, going back to what I was saying before I got sidetracked, I do think that the anime could possibly help, like, fill in some things, but I thought that even without that, I was able to follow what was going on, and I actually really enjoyed this volume, which was a kind of unpopular opinion with the rest of the people that were at the meeting that night. I will also tell you that my daughter really enjoyed this volume also. Now, we definitely read a lot of murder mysteries, and so it's not, like, uncommon for us to go into a story not knowing a lot. And so maybe that part of, you know, the things that we read, that familiarity with going into stories like that, being a little bit confused and things, it's kind of normal for us. And, you know, with a lot of murder mysteries, you don't know a lot of things up front, right? At least when you read novels and stuff. And so I guess for us, it was just like normal. But for a lot of the other people that we meet with, they don't read a lot of mysteries. And so it can be confusing for someone who doesn't read a lot. So I will say that I enjoyed it. My daughter enjoyed it. We will be continuing with this one. It's only 3 volumes. I do hope we get a solid, like, story out of those 3 volumes. I am a little bit concerned that the series is only 3 volumes, but like I said, I will be looking into the anime, and whenever I look into that and actually watch it, which probably won't be until after I read the entirety of this series, I will share my thoughts on if the anime helps this reading experience or not. But all in all, I did enjoy this one. I will be continuing with it. And yeah, so that is what I thought about ID Invaded. And then Island in a Puddle. One of our previous series reads for the Monochrome Manga Club was Erased, which is by the same mangaka. So this story follows our 2 children here on the cover. They're kind of like on their own. They do have a mother who seems to be a single mom, but she is away from the home a lot. And so they are left to fend for themselves for long periods of time. And their mother only comes back periodically to provide them with funds so that they can, you know, take care of themselves while she's away. All they know is that she has some kind of job that makes her be away from the home for a long periods of time. And so they make do with what they have. And so there is a bit of child neglect going on in that sense. But we follow these 2 kids. They're going about their life. And one day their mom comes home. And she tells them, hey, let's go to the amusement park. And so she takes them to the amusement park. She puts them on the Ferris wheel. And while they are on the Ferris wheel gets hit by lightning. And when our male character here wakes up, because it kind of makes him like pass out, things are not as they should be. And that's where I'm going to leave this, because again, the back of the volume where it gives you the summary doesn't give you more than that. And I don't want to be spoilery, but I will say that I did not enjoy this volume as much as I enjoyed the first volume of Erased. And I don't think that this series is going to be as enjoyable for me as Erased. There are certain things that happen in this story as the way that it's being set up where things are kind of not believable in the way that our male character here is like going through thought processes. And so things like that are kind of bothering me with this. And I'm not quite sure I'm going to enjoy just what's going on in this story as it's laid out right now in general. It definitely gives a different feel from Erased, but there's still that mysterious element. There's a mysterious element. So there's something that is going on that is mysterious. Again, really trying not to give away any spoilers about this one, but it doesn't grab me as much as Erased did. And I will also tell you that my daughter also was not as impressed with this volume. In fact, with the things that go on in this volume, she really kind of didn't like it. And so, yeah, I am curious to see like where this story is going to go and how things are going to progress. But the general tone of this particular story, I don't think I'm going to enjoy as much as I enjoyed Erased. So yeah, the art style, it's very similar. I mean, it's the same person, right? But the characters kind of have similar features as characters we saw in Erased. So thankfully, I didn't read this one right after Erased, because there would have been too much of kind of a almost the same face type thing. Because even now that it's been a few months later, some of the characters do look very similar to characters I remember seeing in Erased. But I will be finishing the series sometime soon. And I'm glad that we read it, because I've been very interested in this one and waited until we were done with Erased. But unfortunately, I don't think this one is going to be as good as Erased for me. But we'll see. We'll see. This one definitely could turn around and be much better than Erased for me. But as of right now, comparing this one to my experience of reading Erased, this one is not as intriguing or as entertaining, I would say, as Erased. This one definitely feels a little bit darker as well with what goes on in this particular volume. So that's my thought on that one. And then let's touch briefly on Volume 1 of Delicious in Dungeon, which is our current new series read. So this was a series that was suggested by one of my members to read, because we definitely needed like an in-between series for another series that we really, really want to read, but it's not quite complete in publishing. So we needed that like breaker. And they suggested this one. Now, this is a story that wasn't on my radar at all. I had no intention of checking this title out either in manga or anime format. But the way that they talked about it during our meeting definitely won me over, as well as several of the other members, which is how it got voted to be our next series read. So this one follows a group of adventurers, and it's set in a world where one day these catacombs kind of caved in, and as they were clearing the rubble, they met with this really old man. And apparently underneath, the catacombs, there was this kingdom. And the old man kind of tells them, whoever kills this wizard who sealed their country under these catacombs, whoever kills the wizard will inherit his like kingdom. So it's kind of put all of these adventurers on this like quest to get rid of this magician, right? And so you've got a bunch of people like this in groups, you know, going about their business in these dungeons. So we're following this team right here of people, and at the beginning of their adventure with us, our character here, Laios, he loses his sister to a red dragon. And so he really wants to save her. And so him and the remaining members of his like guild, I guess you would call them, decide that they're going to go and try to save the sister from the belly of the red dragon. But they are broke. They're penniless. They lost all their rations and can't buy anymore. So they decide that in order to sustain themselves, they are going to start eating the monsters in the dungeon. And so this first volume kind of follows you as they start off trying to learn about cooking certain monsters and things like that. They meet up with a dwarf, who's this guy, who, I can't remember what his name is. It started with an S. His name is Senchi. And he is somebody who has lots of experience cooking these types of monsters. And so he gives them tips and tricks. He ends up joining their little group, and they go about the dungeon, trying to find this red dragon. But along the way, it's like a culinary adventure, I guess you could say. This first volume moved very slowly for me. In fact, and I don't know if it's just with all the stress that I'm having in my office life at the moment, that's what caused it. But while I was reading this first volume, I fell asleep 5 times. And normally that's not a really good sign. I didn't really enjoy the first volume of this series. I think it was a lot of like tediousness, I guess you could say, because you're just starting out like learning about the types of monsters that are in the dungeon. You're learning about the races of people that are in this world. You're learning about, what can be eaten, what can't be eaten, how you should cook things and things like that. And it wasn't very enjoyable. So I would definitely tell you that if I was only reading this one volume, like say we had picked this one up as a first in a series read selection, I probably would not have continued with this series. But since we did choose it as a series read, I did go on to volume 2, and I will tell you that volume 2 was much better as a reading experience for me and on a level of enjoyment than volume 1 was. So if you have tried this series and have only read volume 1, definitely try volume 2 before you decide whether or not you're going to not continue with the series. Because for me, volume 2 changed everything. It was much more enjoyable for me. And I don't know, it just moved a lot better. The pacing was a lot better, and it wasn't as tedious as this one. I will also tell you that I laughed out loud while reading volume 2. So definitely try this one out, even if volume 1 wasn't for you. But I definitely wanted to let you know my thoughts on that one as well, because I think it's kind of an interesting thing if you're like reading a first volume and you're not really enjoying it, and don't know that the second volume could potentially be much better. So I wanted to let you know what the experience was like for me in case you also had a similar experience. So that is everything that I have to say about those volumes. Before I let you go, I do want to let you know what our selections will be for the month of April. So our first in a series reads are going to be volume 1 of Akko and Bambi. This one is by Hiro, published by Yam Press, rated teen. So the back of this says, what happens when you put one down-on-his-luck amateur novelist and one amnesiac ghost girl in one bargain-priced haunted apartment? You get the punchline of Bambi's life. The good news is Ako is neither the ghost of the person who supposedly committed suicide in the rental, nor an unfriendly poltergeist hell-bent on causing chaos. But she needs a place to hang out until she can ascend to wherever ghosts go, and Bambi needs source material for his career, so maybe they can have a mutually beneficial relationship. And so I've been very interested in this one. At first I thought it might be some kind of like supernatural mystery. It doesn't seem like it's going to be. It definitely comes across as more a slice of life with a supernatural twist. In fact, the back of this volume actually has a panel, and it's Ako and Bambi, and it says, and Bambi is saying it's not like ghosts actually exist, and Ako is right there. So I think it might be a little bit comedic, kind of slice of life-ish with a little bit of supernatural element to it. I'm really looking forward to this one and seeing what it's all about. So we'll be reading volume 1 of that. And then we will also be reading volume 1 of Bocchi the Rock. This one is by Aki Hamazi, published by Yen Press, rated teen. So this one says, Hitori Goto just wants to be popular, but the thought of interacting with her classmates makes her fall to pieces. Her solution? Become a rock legend, so cool that people approach her instead. However, while spending all of middle school in her closet shredding on the guitar may have earned her anonymous internet fame, it did nothing for her social skills. Now a high schooler, Hitori's feeling ready to shrivel up and die when she gets a sudden request to fill in for a band. It's like her wish came true, but does this most anxious of introverts have what it takes to perform in front of a live audience? So I thought this one sounded interesting. It definitely has that musical element to it. I am a musician, or I used to be anyway. I did play music for several years between elementary school through college. And so I thought that it might be interesting to read a story about music. And I definitely can understand the feeling of being really nervous, before a performance and things like that. And so, yeah, I definitely wanted to check this one out. And I think this one got some kind of Crunchyroll award or something. I'm not quite sure, but yeah, definitely wanted to check this one out. And if you're participating in the Aurelia Magical Readathon, there is a prompt where it says, read something with a yellow title. And so I'm doing a little bit of self-service here because I am participating in the Aurelia Magical Readathon, and one of my prompts is to read something with a yellow title. So this definitely has a yellow title. So if you have the same prompt as I do, this will definitely fit the bill. So that is our first in a series selections, and then we will also be continuing our series reads with volumes 7 and 8 of Assassination Classroom by Yusei Matsui. This one's published by Viz, rated older teen. We are currently reading this on the Shonen Jump app, so if you have a subscriptions, you can read that one there. And then we will also be reading volumes 3 and 4 of Delicious in Dungeon. I do not have my copies of this one yet because the store did not have them, but I will have physical copies by the time I come and talk to you about it next month. So that's everything I have for you today. Let me know down in the comments below if you've read these titles, what you thought of them, but please no spoilers. If you're interested in joining us for any of our selections, you can do so by reading the selections and letting me know your thoughts in the comments of these videos, or you can join our Discord, which is also linked down in the description box below. And if nothing else, and you'd just like to let me know that you were here, if you could leave me an umbrella emoji for Island and a Puddle, that would be greatly appreciated and would really help me out, and that will do it for me today. So I hope you're all doing great. I hope you're all safe and healthy. And until next time, take care and smile always. Bye.